The crocodile is one of the deadliest predators in the world. Unfortunately, they find themselves prey to something far more dangerous. Crocodiles are Archosaurian apex predators found in warm, tropical waters around the world. Because of this, they often clash with other apex predators like lions. True crocodiles are a subfamily of crocodilians, and they separated from other crocodilians, like alligators and caiman, about 55 million years ago. They are more closely related to birds and dinosaurs than most other reptiles. Which explains a lot. To tell a croc apart from an alligator, just take a look at their snouts. Crocs have pointier, V-shaped snouts, while gators have rounder, U-shaped ones. Also, when alligators close their mouths, their lower jaw teeth get covered by their upper jaw. Crocodiles, on the other hand, have interlocking teeth, and when they close their jaws, you can see both their upper and lower teeth. Crocodiles range in size from the dwarf crocodile, which measure up to 1.5 meters long, to the giant saltwater crocodile, which can measure up to 7 meters long and weigh over a ton. They are extremely well-adapted ambush hunters. One of these adaptations are their eyes. They sit at the top of their heads, which allow them to submerge and hide most of their body while still being able to see most of their surroundings. Their eyes are very effective at night due to a layer of crystals behind their retinas. This is called a tapetum lucidum, and it reflects light back into their retina after it's already entered their eye, giving them excellent night vision. Their eyes also feature a nictitating membrane, which is a translucent third eyelid that allows them to keep their eyes open underwater. On land, some crocodiles can run as fast as 17 kilometers an hour. Though crocs are much faster in the water, as their powerful tails can propel them up to 30 kilometers an hour. Their snout is also highly adapted for hunting in the water. Crocodile snouts are very sensitive, more so than human fingertips. While they are heavily armored, they are covered with thousands of little dots called dermal pressure receptors, which can sense even the slightest change in pressure. This allows them to feel small ripples in the water, giving them an accurate picture of their surroundings and the whereabouts of nearby prey. But where the action really is their jaws. Crocs are all about the jaws, and every other adaptation they have is secondary. Crocodiles have the strongest bites in the animal kingdom. Saltwater crocodiles have been measured producing 3,700 psi of bite force, compared to lions, which produce 1,000 psi of bite force. This force is produced by huge muscles in the sides of their head. In fact, crocs give so much real estate to their biting muscles that there's not a lot of room for their muscles that open their mouths, which are famously weak. An adult human could keep a crocodile's mouth shut just by hugging it, which is a pretty adorable image. Crocodiles live primarily in freshwater, though there are some species that can live in brackish and estuaries. Saltwater crocodiles are among the best suited for life in the ocean and have salt glands that filter out the salt in the water. Because of this, they have colonized a vast territory in the eastern Indian Ocean. Saltwater crocs aside, crocodiles are one of the most gregarious reptiles in the world. They live together in large groups, even tolerating each other's presence whilst feeding. Though during mating season, males will fight one another for females. Mating season will see males bellow to attract females. This low-pitched sound can shake the ground beneath them. And when in water, will cause the water around them to dance. Despite their fearsome reputation, crocodiles are good parents and will stay with their young for the first 1 to 2 years of their lives, until they're big enough to go out on their own.
Crocodiles are incredibly dangerous.
Every year, around 1,000 people die from crocodile attacks, and the vast majority of these are saltwater crocodiles and Nile crocodiles. While not as large as a saltwater croc, Nile crocodiles can reach up to 5 meters long, which is plenty large. Their prey is made up of anything that they can catch, oftentimes zebras. But more impressively, they target wildebeest. Nile crocodiles can live in brackish water and are found along the Nile River and sub-Saharan Africa. Their territory crosses over with lions, leading to some magnificent clashes. The American crocodile is the only croc found in North America. It is one of the largest crocs, measuring up to 6 meters long. American crocodiles are the second most seaworthy crocs, which explains their vast range.
Despite that large range, like several species of crocodile, they are vulnerable.
Many species of crocodile are even critically endangered, including the Orinoco, Philippine, Cuban, Siamese, and West African slender-snouted crocodile. They all face increasing threats from habitat degradation, damming, mining, land development, hunting, and a lot more.
Being apex predators, crocodiles are incredibly important for keeping the balance in their ecosystem.
Part of the problem is that crocodiles can be a legitimate threat to human safety, and they look like scary monsters. However, that doesn't mean we should continue to push them over the edge. The Philippine crocodile is critically endangered, and it's estimated that there are only between 500 and 1,000 left in the wild.
Fortunately, there are conservation groups fighting to change that.
In northern Luzon, in 1999, there were less than 20 known Philippine crocodiles in the area, and due to their conservation efforts, by 2010, their numbers counted over 70.
There were 3 main challenges at the start of the program.
The community didn't like crocodiles, they were being killed on sight, and little was known about their biology and ecology. Through the establishment of 6 crocodile sanctuaries, education initiatives meant to teach locals about the crocodile's role in the ecosystem and the successful release of captive-bred crocodiles, the Philippine crocodile has seen a boom in numbers.
As a result of these education programs, no Philippine crocodiles have been deliberately killed in the area since 2004.
Importantly, the community benefited from this conservation program, as it created jobs and improved water supplies, which in turn improved the quality and amount of fish, which in turn improved their diet.
This relatively small conservation effort is an inspiration. It shows us that conservation initiatives not only directly benefit endangered species, but the lives of humans as well.
An ancient beast with razor-sharp teeth. It can swim as fast as fish, and has a quick bite to match. This is the incredible Gharial.
The Gharial is one of the most specialized and rarest crocodilians in the world.
Like its ancient cousins, they've been on Earth for over 100 million years and shared the planet with the dinosaurs of the Cretaceous. They're found in the rivers of northern India and Nepal, where they share their territory with the thicker mugger crocodiles.
Their most unique feature is their long, thin snout with a little bulb at the end. This is an adaptation to hunt.
Gharials are fish specialists and need to have a quick bite to catch agile aquatic prey. Their thin snout cuts through the water with little water resistance. Wide-snouted crocs have stronger bites but aren't nearly as fast as gharials. There are other pescatarian crocodilians, but none are as fast and large as the gharial. The most famous of them is the Malayan false gharial, which lacks the bulb at the end of its snout. Gharials have weaker bites than smaller crocodiles, but that doesn't mean they're not lethal. They have over 100 needle-like teeth. They interlock like a zipper, trapping fish in the gharial's mouth. Gharials usually ambush their prey, but they also have been observed rapidly shaking their head to catch fish. They also eat other aquatic prey such as crustaceans and frogs, especially when young. There are reports of gharials catching small dogs and goats, but fish make up the vast majority of their diet.
Gharials don't attack people, but sometimes they do eat dead bodies.
In some cultures in their range, funeral traditions include releasing dead bodies into the river. Gharials take advantage of this for an easy meal. This doesn't mean that you should approach them. Gharials are huge. They're larger than Nile and American crocodiles. Males are about 4.5 meters long on average, with some size kings getting to over 6 meters in length.
They're not too keen to see you either. In fact, they don't like to encounter large land animals at all.
They're the most aquatic of all large crocodilians and spend most of their life in the water. They only come out to raise their core temperature and prefer small river islands over riverbanks. And it's not hard to see why they prefer the water. Their arms are relatively weak and they can't lift their own weight. And unlike other crocodilians, they can't sprint on land. But underwater, they're extremely agile. Their webbed feet and long, flattened tail give them great swimming power.
Their bulb at the tip of their nose is also an adaptation for serenading ladies underwater.
It lacks bones or cartilage, but it has chambers that act as a resonator. They can make a popping noise to communicate with other gharials as far as 500 meters away. Their sound is unique to each gharial, which makes it easier for them to know who's saying what. Males also use it to make a far-reaching buzzing noise to call females. Only males have this bulb, which makes gharials the most sexually dimorphic crocodilian. They start growing them before they're sexually mature, when they're about 10 years old.
Their bulb resembles an Indian clay pot called a gara, which gives gharials their name.
Oh, there we go.
To find a breeding site, females will travel up to 200 kilometers upstream. After copulation, she'll make a nest near the riverbank and lay her eggs. Gharials make the largest eggs among crocodilians. They're about the size of a baseball, and they usually lay about 40 eggs per clutch. In some cases, they can lay a lot more. The highest number ever recorded was 97.
Imagine carrying 97 baseballs inside of you. No thank you.
When the babies hatch, they call their mom, who digs their nest out and points them towards the water. Other crocodilians carry their babies to safety, but gharial snouts are too chainsaw-like to do it safely. Then, the females and a male will take care of the babies until the monsoon season. The male is not necessarily their father, and younger males often protect other males' babies. This might be a kind of parenthood internship until they're large enough to establish themselves as dominant breeding males. In the meantime, they often carry the babies on their back to protect them. Scientists believe that this is one of the cutest things on Earth, and I couldn't agree more. They're so small.
Despite their apparent prodigious fertility, Gharials are critically endangered.
Populations have crashed in the past 100 years and are less than 5% of what they used to be at the beginning of the 20th century. Studies in the 70s showed that there were just over 200 breeding adults in the whole world. Since then, there have been conservation efforts that involve breeding gharials in captivity and releasing babies in the wild.
Unfortunately, numbers have not improved as expected, and there are still fewer than 1,000 adults left in the wild.
Gill net fishing, water contamination, and habitat destruction due to mining and dam construction are the main reasons most reintroduced gharials never reach maturity. Efforts to restore gharial populations are still ongoing, and hopefully, with improved environmental conditions, these speedy swimming chainsaws will be restored to their former glory. The face of a snapping turtle is the last thing a lot of fish see before they die. It's not pretty.
There are 5 species of snapping turtle across 2 genera, Macrocheles and Calidra. Hail Calidra.
Calidra contains the common snapping turtle, the Mexican snapping turtle, and the South American snapping turtle, while Macrocheles contains the alligator snapping turtle and the Suanese snapping turtle.
These turtles are all quite large, and they're only found in the wild in the Americas.
While the 2 genera do share similar characteristics, they aren't very closely related, and only share a name due to their similar behavior.
The snapping. I said the snapping. Damn it. I can't do it, guys. I've done this. I've tried my whole life. I can't snap my fingers. That's it.
Alligator snapping turtles are the larger of the 2, measuring up to 66 centimeters long and in extreme cases, weighing up to 100 kilograms. Though these massive numbers come from turtles in captivity, and in the wild, an average adult male will only weigh up to 40 kilograms. Common snapping turtles, on the other hand, are much smaller. They measure up to 45 centimeters long, and in the wild, weigh up to 16 kilograms.
Alligator snapping turtles are tanks.
Once they reach a certain size, they become immune to most predators. Only particularly large gators are powerful enough to crack their shells.
They certainly do their namesake justice.
Alligator snapping turtles have claws the length of human fingers, highly ridged carapaces, and sharp triceratops-like beaks, which they use to tear into prey. To hunt, alligator snapping turtles have a vermiform tongue, a tongue that resembles a worm meant to attract dumb fish. The turtle will sit at the bottom of the river or lake with its mouth wide open. It lays absolutely still, except for its tongue, which it wiggles around, mimicking a worm. There, it waits for a fish to swim by that is dumb enough to swim right into their mouths. Their bite is fast and strong enough that if they don't swallow the fish whole, they're sure to decapitate them. They'll eat anything they can catch, and their diet is made up primarily of fish, but they also eat birds, small mammals, baby gators, and other turtles.
There is a lot of misinformation out there about the strength of an alligator snapping turtle's bite. Some cite them as having a bite as strong as an alligator. They don't.
In reality, their bite is much closer to the strength of a human, which is plenty, especially when combined with that beak.
They have enough power to take off a finger.
Yet despite this vicious appearance, they are quite chill, unlike common snapping turtles, which are much more aggressive.
This may be due to their different hunting strategies.
Alligator snapping turtles are ambush hunters, while common snapping turtles are chase hunters. Though it could also be due to their size. A fully grown alligator snapping turtle has few predators, while the much smaller common snapping turtle is more often on the defense.
While alligator snapping turtles are more intimidating in almost every single regard, the common snapping turtle has the more fearsome tail.
Their long tails have a series of bony plates that give them a sawtooth appearance. Their tails look a lot more like dragon tails than their beefy, smooth-tailed cousins. Despite being chase hunters, common snapping turtles are pretty terrible swimmers, preferring to walk along the bottom. They spend the majority of their lives in the water, only ever leaving when basking or laying eggs. In fact, they spend so much of their time in the water, they can often be seen with full heads of hair, their hair being algae.
They live in large bodies of water, but they can also be found in smaller ponds.
They prefer to hang out in areas shallow enough that they can sit with the tips of their noses sticking out of the water.
The most vulnerable point in a snapping turtle's life is when they first hatch.
They break out of their ping-pong ball-like eggs towards the end of the summer. Often, the entire litter will hatch at the same time. Then, it's a mad rush for these dark, toony-sized turtles to get clear of the beach and into the water without being eaten. Once they're in the water, they're not home safe.
Only the luckiest of the lucky survive to be big enough to ward off predators.
Alligator snapping turtles are currently threatened due to overharvesting for meat, the exotic pet trade, and habitat degradation.
Though the situation for snapping turtles is better than it was 70 years ago.
For a long time in Canada and in the United States, turtle soup was a mainstay at restaurants. It was praised for its complexity of flavors. But as turtle numbers plummeted and indoor plumbing negated the need to go to creeks and rivers for fresh water, it became unprofitable to go out and look for turtles. At the same time, factory farming of chickens, cows, and pigs became commonplace, and turtles transitioned from being seen as a food species to being seen as cute and benevolent creatures.
Soon, snapping turtle numbers began to rebound, leaving them to torment swimmers across the continent. So what animals should I talk about next? Please let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for new episodes of Animalogic every other week. Thanks for watching!
The Sri Lankan mangroves. Serving as a natural barrier for the coast, life here is a challenge. With human encroachment, pollution, and climate change decimating the mangroves, life for animals here becomes more of a question with every passing day. Yet, there's one creature in this swamp that is defying the odds and our expectations at the same time. The fishing cat. In the water is probably the last place you'd expect to find your house cat. Yet, in the water is where this small cat, the fishing cat, dominates. With too much competition from predators on land, fishing cats were forced to explore a new niche in order to survive. They turned to the swamp. In order to conquer this new biome, fishing cats had to develop a whole series of adaptations. In the world of small cats, fishing cats are fairly large. Their larger size allows them to wrestle large fish out of the water. These stocky cats have short legs, deep chests, and most unlike other felines, they have short, stubby tails. Spending most of their time hunting in the water, these cats don't need long, graceful tails to help them balance. These swamp things are the world's only felines who specialize in fish. Other cats may eat a fish here and there, but fishing cats got their name for a reason. In a very unfeline-like fashion, fishing cats dive face first into the water to ambush their prey. They'll wait by the water's edge, sitting perfectly still until they see a fish. This fishing cat has spotted one trapped in the shallows. She approaches silently. The fish is struggling, but it can't get out of the shallows. The cat pounces. But meals aren't usually so easy. This fishing cat will need to go a bit deeper. On the lookout for another fish, the cat waits. She spots a fish swimming along the bottom of the mangrove. She dives, sliding through the water with ease. Her head is long, narrow, and very hydrodynamic. She's built to dive. She catches the fish unaware and surfaces. Underwater, no one can hear you meow. They spend so much time of their lives in the water that they have adapted to swim quite well. Their toes on their front feet have partial webbing, which helps them propel themselves through the water. While fishing cats specialize in fish, they will hunt anything near the water. In this case, a duck. These swamp dwellers maintain large territories in pockets throughout Southeast Asia, occasionally overlapping with other fishing cats. They live solitary lives, only meeting to mate. Females will usually have a litter of 2 or 3 kittens, which are born extremely dependent on their mother. They develop quickly, and at just 1 month of age, they'll make their first jump into the water. Though their days of diving may be limited. Endangered, the fishing cat faces an uphill battle. The wetlands are disappearing. 35% of mangroves on the planet have dried up. Their habitat is being cleared to make way for agriculture and human infrastructure. Damming limits the flow of fresh water to the mangroves, increasing their salt content and killing the vegetation. Climate change has led to rising sea levels, which can decimate these coastal barriers. And poachers often trap fishing cats to sell them into the exotic pet trade for their skins and as retribution by fishermen for stealing fish out of their nets. But this cat was lucky enough to make it out alive, though not entirely unscathed. Conservation efforts for the fishing cat are difficult. These mysterious cats of the swamp are incredibly elusive and near impossible to find in the wild. Because of this, many people don't even know what they are. But there are people making a difference. The Fishing Cat Conservancy are educating children in India and Sri Lanka about the fishing cat, in hopes that they will come to love and respect them. They also provide local fishermen with tools, like crab boxes, so they can make a living out of the mangroves without having to cut them down. Fishing cats are just one resident in a biome that is disappearing around the world, and without help from people like you and me, the days for the mysterious fishing cat may be numbered.
The Amazon is a river of death. It's an unforgiving environment whose inhabitants live in a deadly daily struggle. The murky waters teem with predators, all driven by one primal goal: kill or be killed. Beyond the caimans, snakes, and jaguars on the river banks, there's a bevy of hunters ready to strike in its murky waters. These are the most ferocious and weirdest hunters of the Amazon River. The Amazon is one of the most amazing ecosystems on Earth. Its basin is so large that if it was a country, it would be the 7th largest country in the world. That's a lot of land to house a lot of predators. And possibly the scariest of them are the fish. And among them, none is weirder than the payara. Often known as the vampire fish due to its resemblance to Nosferatu, this is a hardy fish that feasts on piranhas. It preys on the most famously terrifying fish in the world. They're kinda like the Omar of fish. If you come for the king, you best not miss, because the payara is ready to stab you with its massive fangs. Payaras can be over a meter long, with fangs the size of bananas. The fangs are so big that they need extra space in their skull to sheathe them. One single bite stabs through the heart and guts of its prey, and then they swallow it whole. You could say this is a little disappointing because they're usually known as vampire fish, but they don't really drink blood. They just make fish skewers every time they go out on the prowl. Thankfully for us in the comfort of our homes, but unluckily for those in the Amazon, there are real vampire fish in the river. But we'll get to them a little later. One of the things about living in the river is that some areas have low oxygen levels, due in part to the dead plant and animal matter that falls and rots in the river. Some animals have adapted to these environments, but not the payara. The payara is all about speed and power, and it needs lots of oxygen. To get it, the fish hangs around rapids waiting for unsuspecting prey to be carried by the current into their mouth daggers. Because of their awesome looks, payaras have become a bit of a favorite species among aquarists. But they're aggressive, hard to keep, and require a lot of space. So please, leave them alone in the Amazon to kill at their leisure, unless you're an expert. And even then, it's not quite a peaceful death, but all things considered, it's not bad compared to the other ways to die in the Amazon. Payaras are metal as hell. They even look as if they were made of mithril. But even they would be wary of the giants of the muck, the Arapaima. The Amazon is the largest or second largest river on Earth, depending on how you measure it. It also has over 1,000 tributaries that form a labyrinth of dark water that can be seen from space. The river is over 5 kilometers wide in some areas, but during the rainy season, it floods to over 40 kilometers in width, making it impossible to even see the other side. It's so wide and its banks so ever-changing that there are no bridges at all in its 8,000 kilometers of length, and humans have to rely on boats for transportation. But during the dry season, the flood descends into shallow ponds and streams, and it's here where the largest fish in South America thrives. This is the Arapaima, or pirarucu. A healthy adult can be over 2 meters long, with some exceptional cases of 3-meter-long monsters. To hunt, they just need to quickly open their mouth, creating a vacuum and suctioning their prey into their mouths. Some reports even say these jungle leviathans leap from the water to snatch birds mid-air. Come on, that's just a cartoonishly terrifying predator. It's like the mosasaur who jumps up and snatches a pterosaur in Jurassic World. It's crazy. On top of that, they're covered in a full-scale armor, which is kind of a marvel of evolutionary engineering. The scales are made of collagen and calcium phosphate, which makes them tough on the outside, but internally, they're made of layers that give them both amazing flexibility and impact absorption. It's a similar structure to that of bulletproof vests. Piranhas and caimans, their theoretical foes, have a hard time penetrating their armor, especially when they're full grown, so it really can do anything it wants in their tiny ponds. As the water level gets lower in the dry season, fish often get trapped in ponds disconnected from the main river. You'd think this would be a problem for a fish the size of a bull, but the Arapaima has yet another ace up its fin. It can breathe out of the water. Arapaimas have adapted to life in low oxygen conditions and drying rivers by turning its swim bladder into a kind of lung. Even in good conditions, they can't use their gills much, and instead come up to the surface to breathe every 15 minutes or so. When the rivers and ponds get lower, they can drag themselves to another body of water for short distances. Unfortunately, their size, armor, and surfacing behavior, which make them fearsome predators in their environments, have also made them very attractive to fisherfolk. And due to overfishing, they're an endangered species. Fisherfolk can spot them when they come up to breathe, and they can use live bait, or even beef and chicken organs as lures to catch them. Their meat is said to taste good, and they have enough of it to feed multiple people for several days. Their scales can be used to make tools, like files and polishing materials, and in some cases, jewelry. There are conservation efforts, like fishing bans in areas of their range, but enforcement can be tricky in the middle of the jungle. The only other fish that can hold an underwater candle to the arapaima in terms of size is the Piraiba catfish. There are reports of some of these catfish reaching lengths of over 3.5 meters long, or about 2 average-sized men stacked one on top of the other. Like the arapaima, these catfish can breathe air from the surface and survive outside of the water for short periods of time. Their barbels or whiskers are full of chemoreceptors and pressure sensors. They can sense and smell any potential prey in their vicinity. Once it gets close enough, they'll strike. These catfish are most active at night, and they're one of the many reasons not to go to the river after sunset. Another reason not to do it? Boiling water. Some areas of the Amazon River are almost at boiling point. The highest reported temperature in the water is 99 degrees Celsius, or 210 Fahrenheit. This was recorded in an area of Peru called Cheney Timpisca. Waters from the Andes go underground and get heated by the Earth's mantle. When they resurface, they're hot enough to kill most animals for several kilometers. As you can imagine, any animal that falls in gets cooked alive. Thankfully, they're far away from the massive waves the river experiences. Yeah, killer waves are yet another thing you have to think about when you're an Amazonian animal. During full moons, close to the spring and autumn equinoxes, ocean waters get into the river and reverses the flow for up to 800 kilometers. They call it the pororoca. At its peak, it creates waves up to 4 meters high that travel hundreds of kilometers into the river. The waves go on for so long that some adventurers surf them. The current record for longest pororoca surf is held by a Brazilian man who rode it for over 12 kilometers in a ride that lasted more than half an hour. I've tried surfing once, and it was honestly the most fun I've ever had failing at something. That actually sounds like a lot of fun. The worst thing that can happen is that you get hit by debris carried by the wave and fall into piranha-infested waters. Surprisingly, that's not scary anymore. Piranhas have a terrible PR problem. Teddy Roosevelt wrote that he saw piranhas eat a cow in minutes. And from there, all people could picture when thinking about these amazing little predators was how quickly they could turn a human into a skeleton. But really, they're not that aggressive and would rather go for smaller prey or in some cases even plant matter than take a chance with a large animal. Their teeth are sharp interlocking triangles that can tear flesh out of prey. They're particularly handy when they find dead land animals that fall into the river. Carrion is a valuable source of food for these fishies. It is true that some species, like the red-bellied piranha, can travel in shoals, but these are mostly defensive maneuvers, since their waters are full of arapaimas, river dolphins, caimans, and herons just waiting for a chance to devour them. While there are hundreds of piranha bite reports annually, most are just single bites to the foot, often a defensive reaction to someone getting too close to their nest. So of all the Amazonian animals that you should know about, this is one I want you to know is more chill than you might have thought. They just look unreasonably scary for a fish their size, but that's not their fault. Their teeth are terrifying, but it could be worse. Imagine if they had human teeth. Oh God, why? This is the piranha's cousin, the pacu. Pacus have moved away from the hunting life to a more vegetarian, protein-heavy diet in nuts. Their teeth, which resemble human molars, help them crush seeds and nuts, as well as other plant matter in the river. Like most seed eaters, they eventually pass them as poop and help trees disperse their seeds. Now that you mention it, their teeth do remind me of another seed disperser I met the other day. So no, this isn't a weirdly specific mermaid with the mouth of a human and the body of a fish. It's just a specialist, and specialists tend to be a little weird. Like the beaverfish. No, this isn't another weirdly specific mermaid with the face of a beaver and the body of a fish. Rather, it's a relative of the common pleco, a cute fish kept in aquariums all over the world. Beaverfish, or panaques, are suckermouth catfish with specialized teeth designed to scrape wood and tough plants. Their sucker mouths help them attach themselves to wood, while their teeth slowly gnaw at it. Their gut bacteria digest the wood and turns it into nutrients and energy for the fish. And if someone tries to interrupt its lumberjack ways, they have fin spines that stab anything that tries to bite it. Yeah, this is a fish that's best left alone. In fact, it's best to leave alone anything at the bottom of the river, especially if they have serrated, venomous barbs and aren't afraid to use them. The bottom of the river is home to river stingrays. There are several species with varying degrees of danger, but they all have incredibly painful venom. In some areas, they're even called something like the "you wish you weren't here" fish. The saying is actually a little darker than that, but we can't say it due to community guidelines. Beyond unimaginable pain, the stings can cause infections, ulcers, and necrosis. They're thought to have evolved to perforate the tough skin of caimans, so of course, it's easy for them to defend themselves from humans. Ouch! First Steve Irwin and now this? Stingrays are kind of getting in my bad books. Just kidding. I love them, just far away from where I swim. But okay, we've beaten around the bush for too long now. We promised you vampire fish, and we're going to give it to you. This is the candiru. Candirus are parasitic fish. They're long and thin and have a great sense of smell. It looks for the ammonia-rich water coming out of the gills of larger fish, like most of the ones we've mentioned in this episode. Once the host is found, it attaches itself to gill chambers and sucks on blood until it's full. After that, it lets go, often causing little to no harm to its prey. Because of their blood-sucking ways, this fish has been accused of swimming up people's urethras. But this seems to be a myth. Quite simply, urethras are too small for these fish to dig into. They might in some instances be attracted by the smell of urine, but there's a huge jump from checking you out while you're peeing into the river to going into your body. In some cases, when starved, the fish can go into the nostrils of a large fish. Fishermen might have seen this, seen their behavior around ammonia, and concluded that they could do that to a human, but no confirmed cases exist.
A murky water hunter with a sixth sense for finding fresh meat. Some might say it's ugly, but if you ask the locals, they'll tell you it might steal your heart and take it to the depths of the Amazon River. These are the South American river dolphins.
When you think Amazonian apex predator, you're probably thinking harpy eagles, jaguars, and caiman. But in the rivers and flooded forests lives a deadly predator with the face of an angel.
Maybe angel-faced is pushing it a bit, but just look at these guys. Amazonian river dolphins are cute killers, though maybe not as conventionally beautiful as their cousins, the bottlenose dolphins. They're one of several river dolphin species in South America. There's some taxonomic controversy, but the species usually recognized are the Bolivian river dolphin, the Araguayan river dolphin of Brazil, the Amazon river dolphin, and the Orinoco river dolphin. Some scientists claim they're all subspecies of the same species, so for simplicity's sake, we'll call them all by their common name, botos.
Botos evolved from marine dolphins, but nobody knows for sure how they got to South America. They could have entered the continent from the Atlantic through the Amazon Delta, but it's also possible that they came from the Pacific side before the formation of the Andes.
These river dolphins are thousands of kilometers away from their closest seafaring relative, the La Plata dolphin, the only river dolphin known to live in saltwater estuaries, as well as the coast of the South Atlantic.
Though their biology differs from marine dolphins in fundamental ways.
Marine dolphins, such as the common dolphins or the bottlenose, are built for speed. They have to travel vast distances in search of food and will catch fish in the open water. Their double-slitted eyes work equally well in and out of the water. And they're able to dive up to 40 meters in search of fish.
Botos, on the other hand, are built for agility. The levels of the rivers they live in can fluctuate up to 12 meters. And when those levels are high, it floods the forest. And the fish head out there because it offers more safety than open rivers and more feeding opportunities.
Botos need to be able to follow their prey into those flooded environments full of obstacles. That's why being smaller and more pliable is a must when navigating and hunting in the flooded jungle. While bottlenose dolphins are about 4 meters long and weigh up to 300 kilograms, botos are just over half the weight of a bottleneck and are just about 2.5 meters long. Botos females are even smaller, which is unique among river dolphins. In Asian species, females tend to be larger than males. Marine dolphins are built like arrows. Their neck vertebrae are fused to keep them straight when swimming at high speeds. Botos vertebrae are not fused. This allows them to turn their head 90 degrees. Because of their necks, when they surface for air, bottlenoses have to do a bigger jump. Botos are more flexible and only have to come out slightly to expose their blowholes.
That doesn't mean they can't jump, though. They've been documented breaching over 3 meters out of the water.
But while a marine cetacean like a Dahl's porpoise can swim at 70 kilometers an hour, and a bottlenose can reach speeds of 35 kilometers an hour, a boto can only swim at 20 kilometers an hour. Though normally they only swim at a leisurely 3 kilometers an hour. They're the slow walkers of the dolphin family.
We've kind of been burying the lead here, but yes, botos are adorably pink.
But unlike flamingos and other pink birds who get their coloration from their food, botos get it from scraping their body on rocks and plants.
So yep, they're basically covered in scars. But it's cool, chicks take scars.
In general, older males will be pinker because in addition to having to swim in rough areas, they'll fight each other for access to females. Botos are less gregarious than marine dolphins, usually hanging out in duos or trios. Though because of the nature of their habitat, they're found in higher densities than other dolphins in their ecosystems.
They have a lot of neighbors, but not a lot of friends.
Some exceptionally large groups of over 30 dolphins have been documented, but they're extremely rare. During the rainy season, the females and the young spend most of their time in the flooded forest, while the males stay in the river. That doesn't mean the males get less of a meal. South American tropical rainforests are packed with all sorts of yummy food.
And if you're starting to think that they're not as brutal as their saltwater relatives, you'd better reconsider, because one of the botos' favorite meals is piranhas.
During the dry season, when all the fish are concentrated in a relatively small area, botos can be a bit picky with their food. But during the flooding season, they catch whatever they can.
They have been observed cracking open freshwater crabs and turtles. These adorable predators eat about 5% of their body weight every day. And the biggest key to their hunting success is their echolocation.
Botos have a huge echolocation organ on their head, officially and hilariously called a melon, which helps them find their way in the dark and murky waters of the rainforest. But since the jungle is full of trees and rocks and sandbanks, the echo from a single click might be too confusing.
River dolphins produce about 80 clicks per second to give them constantly updating spatial mapping of their surroundings.
Their clicks aren't nearly as loud as those of dolphins in marine environments, but botos don't need them to travel as far, since their hunting grounds are smaller.
Botos are deeply entrenched in several Amazonian cultures' folklore.
They're often portrayed as seductive shapeshifters who can take on the shape of a handsome man who attends parties and lures beautiful women to the river.
That's what I'm talking about.
Hey, sounds like our producer Andreas could be one.
Unfortunately, their charm doesn't protect them from fishermen, who often accidentally catch them and other river cetaceans in their nets, where the botos suffocate to death. More recently, some fishermen have come to use river dolphin meat as bait. Others deliberately kill them because they damage fishing equipment. This has led to a rapid decline in their populations. The Amazonian river dolphin is an endangered species, and local governments have banned the killing of dolphins and put a moratorium on fishing species caught with boto meat.
Hopefully, as more people become aware of their plight, they'll get better protection. And we might see them again in human form at a party, hitting on beautiful people like you.
Colombia has declared war against the hippo.
What? Okay, let's back up. Hippos are from sub-Saharan Africa, so what are they doing in South America? The answer is, strangely enough, cocaine.
The cocaine hippo saga is one of the strangest conservation stories of all time, and it might soon be coming to an end.
So we sent one of our producers to Colombia to see one of the largest and most dangerous invasive species in the world, the Colombian hippo. The Colombian invasive hippo crisis has been over 40 years in the making.
The ethics of their removal is muddier than in almost any other invasive species, as is the danger. And to this day, the public is divided on what to do with them.
But let's start from the beginning.
In 1981, notorious drug dealer Pablo Escobar imported 4 hippos for his private zoo.
His daughter was a huge animal lover, and Pablo, at that time one of the richest men in the world, was happy to buy her 3 females and 1 male hippo.
The hippos were brought to his estate, Hacienda Nápoles, halfway between Medellin and Bogota, and housed in a large pond, alongside other wild African animals like giraffes, rhinos, elephants, and zebras. Because of their owner, they came to be known as cocaine hippos, or narco hippos.
The state took over Hacienda Nápoles after Escobar's death in 1993, and most of the animals got transferred to zoos around the country.
But the hippos were too difficult to capture, and the herd had grown to 16 by then, so they were left at the pond, assuming that they would stay there and would eventually die out.
But they didn't. The local agencies failed to realize that Hacienda Nápoles was very close to the Magdalena River, the largest river in Colombia, and a perfect habitat for hippos.
A few years later, the cocaine hippos found the Magdalena and spread through it. With no dry season or natural predators, their population ballooned.
Today, there are an estimated 160 hippos as far as 100 kilometers away from where they were first introduced at Pablo Escobar's private zoo. So what's the big deal? Why can't we let cocaine hippos enjoy a nice South American river? For a while, that was the attitude of the government too. until reports of attacks on fishermen became all too common.
Hippos are famously territorial. They're one of the deadliest mammals in the world, only being beaten by humans and dogs.
But dogs mostly kill you by giving you rabies, and humans by, being human.
Hippos, on the other hand, trample you, gore you, and in some cases bite off your limbs and head.
So in 2009, the government decided to cull a hippo that had been identified as being aggressive towards fishermen. They called him Pepe the Hippo and summoned the military to help get rid of him.
They did what they were asked to do, but later published a picture of soldiers carrying machine guns and posing with the dead Pepe.
This sparked major outcry in environmental groups and the public in general, which led to a pause in the hippo cull.
The pros and cons of having cocaine hippos in the Magdalena had to be weighed a bit more carefully.
Let's start with the positives.
Hippos eat a lot and poop a lot, and sometimes the nutrients they bring into the water can promote plant growth, which in turn provides food and shelter for fish and birds. They can also create paths where they walk and connect separate ponds and rivers and give access to other animals to new foraging areas.
But most interestingly, some people see them as an accidental rewilding success story, noting that South America used to be home to massive herbivores.
Glyptodons, ground sloths, and all other mega-herbivores went extinct in the past 10,000 years. Restoring large herbivores to river ecosystems in South America could have a positive impact. Hippos would do the ecological jobs those extinct animals used to do.
South American hippos would also be a sort of backup for African hippo populations, which have been in decline for the past few decades.
And finally, the hippos have also become an ecotourism attraction, which has led to the building of hotels, observation decks, and other infrastructure that has given jobs to locals in the ecotourism industry.
But there's also a lot of bad. If their population keeps growing, they could wreak havoc on their local ecosystem.
There are currently close to 200 hippos in Colombia. They grow fast, become sexually mature at 5 years of age, can have kids every 18 months, and they can live up to 50 years. They also have no predators and lots of available food, so their mortality rate is extremely low.
Depending on how you calculate population growth rates, there could be anywhere between 800 and 5,000 hippos in the next 25 years.
Attacks on people are the main concern. The area that they live in has lots of fishing villages, and while there haven't been any deadly attacks yet, as the hippo population grows, it's only a matter of time until a fisherman crosses the wrong hippo.
Also, hippo poo kills ponds. The more you know.
When there's just a little extra nutrients, in this case hippo poo, in the water, plants grow really well. But when there's too much, the pond gets overrun by algae. Then, as the algae dies and decomposes, the water loses its oxygen, killing all fish living in it.
This is especially dangerous for this river ecosystem because a lot of river fish have their nurseries in connected ponds.
If those ponds become toxic, there's nowhere safe for them to lay their eggs. Low fish populations will affect all the animals that rely on them, as well as fishermen in the region. Local animals like river otters, capybaras, and manatees could also suffer from lack of food and die as a result of interactions with aggressive territorial hippos.
Finally, as hippos walk around, their massive weight compresses the soil beneath their feet, making it harder for plants to root and eventually causing desertification.
The effects of an invasive species as powerful as the hippo would be devastating. Invasive species like cats, dogs, rats, and foxes have destroyed local populations in Australia.
This is the biggest snake I've ever seen in my whole life. Oh my god.
Burmese pythons are threatening native species in Florida. And European stoats have decimated bird nesting grounds in New Zealand. The hippo could have similar or worse effects in river ecosystems of South America. It wouldn't be an overnight event, but if they managed to colonize other large rivers in the region, like the Orinoco or Amazon rivers, hundreds of local species would be at risk. Even at a local level, an expansion of the hippo throughout Colombia could be catastrophic.
If hippos continue to thrive unchecked in Colombia, it will degrade ecosystems and threaten local species, with unknown snowballing effects.
Fortunately, hippos are largely landlocked, or riverlocked, to the Magdalena River system, with the nearest river leading to the Amazon being about 700 kilometers away by land. Meaning that the risk of them spreading to the rest of the Amazon basin and taking over is basically null.
That said, if Pablo Escobar was Brazilian instead of Colombian, the Amazon might look a lot scarier than it does today. And it already looks pretty scary.
So yeah, the bad, unfortunately, outweighs the good.
So what are we supposed to do with all these hippos?
Culling them from helicopters or calling up the army to deal with them was considered inhumane, and generally a pretty bad look for a country that's still trying to build its ecotourism industry. Castrating the males is expensive and dangerous because a large team is required to find them, tranquilize them, operate on them, and monitor them.
The hippos also have a very thick skin that make landing a tranquilizing dart a lot harder than it seems, despite the size of the target. And also, since hippos run to the water when they're startled, they could drown if they dive after they've been tranquilized.
Hippos also hide their testicles inside their body, so the procedure isn't as simple as it is in dogs and cats.
So in 2023, the Colombian government announced a plan to deal with them. 85 hippos will be captured and sent to zoos around the world, and 40 hippos per year will be castrated from then on.
It will cost hundreds of millions of dollars, but it will save the Magdalena River and its endemic species from the hungry cocaine hippos. If you want to see a wild hippo, you still have time. Hacienda Nápoles is open to the public and has several hippos in its network of ponds and streams. You might even run into one in the streets of the town, but you should hope that you don't. And while you're there, you can explore the amazing flora and fauna of this largely uncharted river. The carnivorous species of this order are jawless parasites that slurp the life out of their victims with their terrifying, razor-sharp, tooth-ringed mouths. Most people, and certainly all fish, would flee in horror at the sight of this sucker. That is, unless you're in Latvia, where it's considered a local delicacy and costs 4 times more than beef. This is the lamprey.
An order of about 40 species of ancient vertebrates called petromyzontiforms. 18 of those species are carnivorous, parasitic, and here to give you chupacabra vibes.
Lamprey are sometimes inaccurately called lamprey eels because of their resemblance. While eels are elongated bony fish, lamprey skeletons are made out of cartilage, actually making them more similar to sharks than to eels.
And even though they are slippery as eels, thanks to their lack of scales, eels, these vampire wannabes, are not.
The Atlantic sea lamprey is one such carnivorous species and is an invasive one to boot. Great efforts are taken to eliminate it, but since the lamprey has stayed roughly the same for the past 340 million years and survived 4 major extinction events, this slippery fish is certainly in it to win it.
2021 marks the 100th anniversary of the Atlantic sea lamprey invading the upper North American Great Lakes.
While Atlantic sea lamprey are native to Lake Ontario, the final lake in the chain of Great Lakes which serves as the outlet to the Atlantic Ocean via the St. Lawrence River, it wasn't until relatively recently that they gained access to the rest of the Great Lakes. Niagara Falls acted as a natural barrier, keeping the Atlantic sea lamprey from accessing Lakes Erie, Huron, Michigan, and Superior. It wasn't until 1921 that they were first spotted in Lake Erie, 2 years after the man-made Welland Canal, which bypasses Niagara Falls, was deepened.
By 1938, they were running loose in all the remaining Great Lakes, as well as many other connected bodies of water.
To feed, the Atlantic sea lamprey and other carnivorous species suction themselves onto their victims with their sharp, horn-like teeth that encircle their jawless mouths. Once attached, they use their pointed tongues to bore through the fish's scales and flesh, a process that is terrifyingly called rasping.
Once latched on, they suck the blood and other bodily fluids from their prey. Anticoagulant enzymes make sure that the helpless victim's blood doesn't clot and stop the suckfest.
Creatures that drink blood are known as hematophagous. This includes creepy crawly pests like mosquitoes, ticks, fleas, bedbugs, and leeches, which also use anticoagulants to keep their prey's blood flowing.
Oh, he's biting. I can feel his teeth digging into my elbow.
Other hematophagous animals include the vampire bat, the red-tailed oxpecker, and the vampire finch. The 5-inch-long ammocetes bury into the beds of streams and filter feed on algae and other microorganisms. They'll stay this way for about 4 years, or even longer for non-carnivorous species. Then they turn into transformers.
No, really, that's what the juveniles are called. They just look like smaller versions of their adult selves at this point. By the following summer, carnivorous lamprey transformers become full-blown adults, and that's when the feeding frenzy begins.
Sea lampreys feed on all types of fish, including trout, salmon, whitefish, yellow perch, walleye, catfish, and sturgeon. In their OG ocean home, Atlantic sea lamprey do not typically kill the fish they feed on, thanks to coevolution. Without this coevolution in the Great Lakes, however, sea lampreys have a 40 to 60% kill rate.
Each of these bloodsuckers can kill up to 40 pounds of fish during their 12 to 18-month feeding period. Then the adults spawn and die shortly after, leaving the next generation to pick up the torch of decimation.
Controlling lamprey populations in the Great Lakes takes a serious team effort. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission, in cooperation with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, all work together to keep lamprey populations down. They do this in a few ways, by treating infected streams with lampricide, which kills the lamprey ammoset while having little to no impact on other fish and wildlife, with barriers to block the paths of spawning adults, and by tricking their keen senses of smell with pheromones to attract and trap them.
This fish might seem like a horror movie monster, but it's worth repeating that not all lampreys are terrifying bloodsuckers with nightmare holes for mouths.
The non-carnivorous species, for example, don't feed at all. Instead, they live on the reserves they've stockpiled during their larval phase, spawning and dying within 6 to 10 months of their transformation into adults.
A voracious tadpole hunter, a flying scuba diver, and the holder of the most unusual eyes in the animal kingdom. This is one of the most specialized insects in the world, but it has colonized most freshwater ponds and streams in warm and temperate climates. This is the diving beetle. Diving beetles are found all over the world in ponds with leafy cover. They live in every continent except, you guessed it, Antarctica.
There are over 4,000 species, and they range in size from about 1 centimeter to 5 centimeters long. Most diving beetles are brown or black, but the more stylish species can rock the polka dot look.
Diving beetles are masters of the land, water, and air.
They spend most of their lives underwater, though they're good flyers and will go from pond to pond looking for new sources of food. Their ability to fly is especially important to species in warmer climates, as their ponds tend to evaporate in the summer. To avoid predators such as birds and dragonflies, they fly at night and rely on chemoreception to find new ponds. Once they find a new pond, they dive down and look for vegetation. Their long and powerful hind limbs propel them as they look for the perfect plant or rock to cling to. If live prey or a carcass drifts nearby, they'll pounce on it and devour it.
When it comes to diving beetles, most things are on the menu, as they're often rushing to get enough energy to molt, pupate, or reproduce.
Mosquito larvae, tadpoles, and carrion of larger vertebrates are their most common prey, and they'll often gang up to eat it. Even crickets are readily eaten if they happen to fall into the water.
My favorite species is the sunburst diving beetle. It was only discovered in 1996, but since then it's become one of the most popular beetles at zoos and aquaria.
Their beautiful coloration is a warning to predators. In the back of their head, they have glands that secrete a noxious milky substance. Most predators seem to avoid these little guys, but their defenses are especially effective against fish, as their chemicals contain fish-deterrent steroids. The males also have tiny suction cups on their frontal limbs to help them attach themselves to rocks and to stick themselves to females for more convenient access during mating.
These little guys have a self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. They're literal scuba divers.
They're able to get air from the surface and make a bubble under their wings. The bubble is also known as a physical gill and extends towards the back of the animal where its breathing holes are located. The amazing thing about the bubble is that unlike scuba tanks, it can take oxygen from the surrounding water. This gives them extra diving time, but after a while the oxygen gets depleted. The beetle then releases its bubble and goes to the surface to get a new one.
Unfortunately for the beetle, their bubble is also home to parasites.
Mites attach themselves to their underwings and rely on the beetle's air to survive. If the beetle dies in the water, the mites die too, as they can't live anywhere else. Their association goes back over 100 million years, and it's one of the oldest extant examples of obligate parasitism.
Diving beetles are one of the rare examples in nature where the babies are cooler than the grown-ups. Their larvae are called water tigers due to their unmitigated badassery.
Water tigers are longer than adult diving beetles and have huge pincers to catch prey. Their hunting strategy consists mostly of waiting for pond critters to swim too close. Then, the water tiger attacks and chases the prey with quick, undulating motions. Tadpoles seem to be their favorite prey. Adult diving beetles often lay their eggs on frog eggs, so that when the water tigers emerge, they have a ready source of food. After they gorge themselves with delicious baby frogs and are ready to pupate, they come out of the water. They bury themselves in mud to undergo their complete metamorphosis.
The water tigers of the sunburst diving beetle have some of the most unusual eyes in the entire animal kingdom.
They are the only known example of truly bifocal vision. Their eyes have bifocal lenses connected to two separate retinas. The lenses are able to create two separate sharp images, each of which goes to a different retina. Unfortunately, the precise function of this arrangement is unknown, but it might help them to keep an eye on distant predators and the same eye on nearby prey.
A river monster who could take on dinosaurs and fish the size of great white sharks. Their cousins walk among us, but we're just beginning to understand them. A giant killer among giants. This is the Sarcosuchus. Around 120 million years ago, there lived a creature that made even the dinosaurs tremble. The Sarcosuchus lived in the rivers of Gondwana, which later split into South America and Africa. This croc-like creature wasn't really a crocodilian, but belonged to a related clade called Pholidosauridea. But for comparison purposes, let's take a moment to talk about the saltwater crocodile. These behemoths can get up to 6 meters in length and weigh over 1,000 kilograms. They can catch and eat prey as large as gaurs and water buffaloes. They're the largest living reptiles on the planet today. But this modern giant would seem like a little lizard next to the mighty Sarcosuchus, who scientists believe could have been up to 12 meters long and weighed over 4,000 kilograms. There still is a bit of uncertainty on their size because there are no complete fossils of this ancient beast. All we have are estimates based on the size of their skull and their hip bones. But even the most conservative calculations put it at least 50% longer and 3 times heavier than the largest living crocodilians. The snout of a juvenile was over a meter long, and it was relatively narrow with a bump at the end, similar to the Indian Gharial. Its shape tells us that they mostly fed on fish for the first several years of their lives. Narrow snouts are more hydrodynamic than broader ones, so it takes less force to rapidly open and close them underwater. Their prey is bitten and swallowed in the blink of an eye. As they got older, their snout got wider and their diet became more varied. This type of transformation is not seen in modern crocodilians, but supported a life where they started out eating fish and then would get big enough to catch prey outside of the water. Their eyes could only move up and down, so we can deduce that they would hang out near the shore, just waiting for the right moment to snap at whatever came their way. Their expanded menu included dinosaurs and other vertebrates, such as large turtles that ventured too close to the water. Catching dinosaurs was obviously a dangerous business, so to protect themselves, Sarcosuchus had a thick layer of bony scales all the way from their neck to the middle of their tails. It was a nightmare in shining armor. Even though they could eat more things as adults, fish were still a viable option. One of their likely prey was a giant riverfish called Mawsonia, a coelacanth-like leviathan that could reach 6 meters in length, about the same size as Bruce from Jaws. Getting this big and deadly could take decades, and sometimes we can tell the age of a fossil animal by cutting a thin section of their bone and counting the lines of arrested growth, kind of like the growth rings you count on the inside of a tree trunk. These lines are formed when the animal's metabolism slows down dramatically, usually during the winter, so in effect, each line represents a year of age. A fossil of one Sarcosuchus individual, estimated to have died at 80% of its maximum potential size, was found to have been about 40 years old based on these growth lines. So from this, we can extrapolate that they reached their full monstrous size at about 60 years of age. There's still a lot left to learn about this magnificent species. We've only discovered a handful of fossils, but excavations are ongoing. Their fossils are mostly found in deserts in remote areas of North Africa. Some of the most recent discoveries took place in Tatooine, Tunisia, a place that was the shooting location for a famous desert planet in a somewhat popular space opera. It's wild to think that that area was once a lush forest. But hey, the Earth changes, and those changes are what make evolution happen. This super-sized snake is the largest the world has ever seen. This gargantuan reptile was so long that it wouldn't have had any trouble wrapping itself around the belly of a blue whale. This is Titanoboa. Titanoboa is the new kid on the snake block, having only been discovered in 2009. But it's been making a big splash in paleontology circles ever since. Titanoboa was discovered in the Cerrejón coal mine in northeastern Colombia. That is where it gets the second half of its scientific name, Titanoboa cerrejonensis. And it certainly deserves the first half, as this snake was a true titan. Initially, the paleontologists studying the site didn't even recognize the vertebrae as snake bones since they were so large. Even they were shocked to find such a massive snake among the layers of coal. At a whopping 13 meters long and almost a meter wide, Titanoboa weighed over 1,100 kilograms. That's longer than a Tyrannosaurus rex, as wide as a doorway, and heavier than a walrus. Before Titanoboa, the largest snake ever discovered was Gigantophis garstini, a 7-meter-long serpent that lived in North Africa about 40 million years ago. But at about twice its length, Titanoboa makes Gigantophis look like just a little guy in comparison. To give you an idea of how these two giants stack up against snakes today, the longest living snake is the reticulated python, which averages just over 6 meters long, or about the length of a short school bus. Until Titanoboa was discovered, herpetologists debated for decades just how large a snake could theoretically get. Their best estimate was around 12 meters long, and Titanoboa at 13 meters long absolutely smashed everyone's expectations. Among the fossilized ribs and vertebrae that were found in the coal mine, about 30 individuals of Titanoboa were identified, including a complete skeleton and skull. The rocks in which they were found were dated about 60 million years old, from shortly after the mass extinction that killed off the dinosaurs. That makes Titanoboa the world's largest predator we know of for a period of over 30 million years, until the emergence of Megalodon 23 million years ago. You know, the massive 15-meter-long shark, everyone's favorite whale eater. Snakes like Titanoboa are poikilothermic, or in other words, they're a type of cold-blooded animal whose body temperature fluctuates. This means that they cannot regulate their own temperature and rely on thermal energy from the environment to power their metabolism. The body shape of poikilotherms, which are often flat like fish or elongated like snakes, helps them heat up and cool down quickly. The largest snakes today live around the equator, because the higher temperatures allow for the development of bigger bodies. The further you get away from sweltering temperatures, the smaller the poikilotherms become. To determine Titanoboa's size, paleontologists took the relationship between the size of living snakes and their vertebrae and applied it to the ancient serpent. Paleontologists believe that Titanoboa had more than 250 vertebrae. So how did Titanoboa actually get this big? The growth strategy of other giant reptiles since the last mass extinction has been to extend the duration of their growth so that they keep growing for longer. One study suggests that Titanoboa not only spent more time growing than its ancestors, but was also growing faster, which would explain why this snake was able to get so big. A large proportion of the adult individuals found in the coal mine were 13 meters long, suggesting that this may have been the average adult size and not just an outlier. Prior to Titanoboa's discovery, not a single land-dwelling animal from 55 to 65 million years ago had ever been found in tropical South America. Because of the relationship between size and ambient temperature, the discovery of Titanoboa actually helped scientists gain a greater understanding of the environment and climate in which it lived. They concluded that the temperature would have needed to be at least 30 degrees Celsius to support Titanoboa's growth to those gigantic dimensions. Plant fossils in the area that resemble today's tropical plants showed that Titanoboa lived in an ancient rainforest, the oldest one ever found in South America and the foundation on which our current Amazon ecosystem is built. But Titanoboa wasn't the only treasure discovered in the Cerrejón coal mine. Fossil hunting can be difficult in areas where there is no exposed rock. The mine, however, unearthed a wealth of other fossils, from turtles to crocodiles to fish. This showed that the area at the time was a swampy environment, similar to the Florida Everglades. The presence of these aquatic animals supported the hypothesis that Titanoboa spent lots of time in water. Given its huge size, Titanoboa was likely quite awkward on land and probably preferred to glide around in the water like today's anacondas. Their teeth also seem to be better suited to catch fish, which supports the idea that they were aquatic. Their diet likely consisted of giant freshwater fish and potentially large crocodiles. Step aside, Steve Irwin. These guys were likely the original crocodile hunters. Will Titanoboa remain the largest snake ever discovered? Or are there even larger fossilized serpents waiting to be uncovered? If so, I hope that one day they slither into our lives.
Today, these small creatures can be seen frolicking in the seas, digging complex tunnels, hanging out in the trees, or maybe even doing tricks in your living room. While they may seem small and unassuming, these ferocious animals come from an ancient line that reached its peak with giants more than 30 million years ago. This is the rise and fall of the giant mustelids. Today, we're going to talk about extinct giant mustelids. Mustelids include extant long hunters such as weasels, otters, and wolverines. In addition to stemming back tens of millions of years to the Oligocene, this ultra-successful family is also the largest in the order of carnivora. The diversity of habitats, ranges, diets, and features of mustelids today is the greatest of any carnivoran family. They have colonized almost every ecological niche, from marine ecosystems to tree canopies, throughout the world, except, of course, Antarctica. One thing that all extant mustelids have in common is their reputation for ferociousness. While today's mustelids are on the smaller side of the spectrum, the mustelids of the past tended towards gigantism. Around 31 million years ago, musteloids began to diversify into 4 distinct groups. Mephididae, which includes skunks, Ailuridae, of which the sole living species is the red panda, Procyonidae, which includes raccoons and coatis, and the stars of our show, Mustelidae. This is a prime example of adaptive radiation, when a large number of species evolved from a common ancestor. Giant mustelids started showing up around 10 million years later. Enhydrictis galactoides, which lived in the Mediterranean during the Pleistocene, was one such giant mustelid. Even though it weighed only 10 to 15 kilograms, it's considered giant because it's over twice as heavy as its closest living relative, the 3-kilogram South American grisone. Larger still was the African mustelid Ecorus ikacarin, a leopard-like hypercarnivore which stood 60 centimeters at the shoulder and was built very different than the mustelids we know today. Unlike today's mustelids that have short limbs and can only manage short bursts of speed, Ecorus had long legs, built more like a leopard's, and the upright stance of an active hunter. This predator was adapted to stalking and running, like modern dogs and hyenas. Miocene predators often had generalized hunting traits, putting their tactics somewhere between feline, pounce and grapple, and canine, chase and kill. The theory here is that a great abundance of prey didn't demand specialization in order for Miocene predators to snag a meal. One of the most complete and largest fossilized mustelids that we've ever found is that of an Eomelivora pivetoi. Located in Spain, this Eomelivora pivetoi specimen was found with the partial remains of at least 5 other individuals. Eomelivora was hypercarnivorous, meaning that more than 70% of its diet consisted of meat. It was even more hypercarnivorous and larger than wolverines, today's largest land-dwelling mustelid, though it was a distant honey badger relative. While most mustelid species diversification happened in Eurasia, mustelids did wander to almost every part of the world. In North America, there was the giant Megalictus ferox. This enormous mustelid was shaped like a ferret, but had the size of a jaguar. It weighed up to 100 kilograms and lived during the early Miocene, about 20 million years ago. Megalictus's skull was massive, and not even just by mustelid standards. It would have been about the length of a jaguar's skull and as wide as a black bear's. Its teeth were adapted to crush bones, like their distant relative, wolverines.
You hear that? That's moose bone breaking in his teeth. A wolverine's third upper molar is actually turned inwards like other mustelids, except theirs is way bigger. And this is designed to help them hold onto and crunch bones much more effectively, especially because most of their meals, like this one, are frozen. So he's grabbing onto that meat and twisting and turning to pull off pieces of frozen flesh. Now, wolverines don't mind at all if their meal is frozen. Frozen meat is what they're built for.
In the wild, if you got this close to a wolverine on a carcass, that would be a true miracle.
Oh, I bet.
You'd have to be, and it might only happen once in a lifetime.
Well, he's extremely patient, and I'm grateful for that.
While Megalictus once held the title of largest mustelid, in 2022, a larger species was discovered in Ethiopia. This enormous otter, which lived about 3 million years ago, was named Enhydriodon omoensis, and was the most giant of the giants. At over 200 kilograms, E. omoensis was the size of a lion. Based on analysis of its fossilized tooth enamel, E. omoensis likely ate a combination of terrestrial and aquatic prey, though it's not clear if it was a hunter or a scavenger. Either way, its teeth would have been perfect for chomping down on hard mollusks and even crunching bone. Along with many other large-sized carnivores, Enhydriodon omoensis likely went extinct in Africa during the Plio-Pleistocene transition, 3.2 to 2.6 million years ago. Some scientists believe that their extinction was triggered by the warmer climate of the Pliocene transitioning to the glacial ice ages of the Pleistocene. Another theory is that coexistence with our early human ancestors, Australopithecus and other hominid species, spelled an end for these larger and dangerous carnivores. While climate change may have killed Enhydriodon omoensis in Africa, it may also be responsible for the first burst of mustelid diversification. It all began with climate shifts that resulted in the emergence of grasslands about 33 million years ago. As Antarctica drifted to the South Pole, global cooling made carbon dioxide levels fall. This atmosphere was ideal for specific types of plants, and especially grasses. Forest ecosystems began to transition to the grasslands of the early Oligocene, and, as a result, about 60% of terrestrial mammals went extinct. Grazing ungulates took over and became larger, and so did the carnivores that preyed upon them. On the flip side, smaller rodent herbivores could hide in the grass and take refuge in tunnels underground. This smaller prey gave rise to smaller carnivores, including mustelid ancestor Paleogale, which was cat-like and weighed about a kilogram. From there, the floodgates were open to the evolution of all of the weird and wonderful mustelids we know today. Considering their rap as ferocious killers, one can only imagine how terrifying it must have been to come toe-to-toe with a puma-sized weasel.
Of all of our discoveries, electricity is probably in the top 3, but we're not the only ones who learned to harness it. These animals are electric type. Living primarily in our lakes and oceans, there are two broad categories of electric animals: passive and aggressive.
This urge to maintain an electrical balance is potential electric energy.
Passive electric animals are electroreceptive, meaning that they are able to detect electric fields in order to find prey. Chimera monstrosa, echidnas, platypus, sharks, bees, and many other species are all electroreceptive. In order to detect electricity, these species have little holes on their bodies with electroreceptive organs. By calculating the voltage difference in the electroreceptors along their body, they can feel where other fish are, and in some cases what kind of fish they are and how big. The second category of electric animals are the aggressive electrics. These guys are able to create their own electric field, and they're called electrogenic. While there are a few electroreceptive species on land, for the electrogenic, we'll have to go out to sea.
The ocean floor is a dream world, silent, vast, mystic, unreal.
Most fish species that are electrogenic are also electroreceptive, and only a handful of those produce a notable shock, about 38 species in total. What is particularly interesting about electric animals is that they're not closely related. The ability to create an electric shock has evolved independently at least 8 times, so there must be something to it.
Now, when an eel locates a fish or when he is disturbed, he puts out what we call the double whammy.
We're not entirely certain on how electrogenic species evolved, but the leading theory is that they evolved from electroreceptive species. The theory is that in species of electroreceptive fish, their electric organs were highly active and able to generate enough electrical activity to be detected by the fish's own electroreceptors. Finding use in this development, these fish began using the discharge as a means of communication with other fish, as well as navigation in their murky habitats. As they gained more control of their electric organs, they were able to generate more power, and eventually got strong enough to stun prey. Does this mean that if we're lucky enough to not burn the world to the ground, that it's marginally possible that in 5,000 years we may have echidnas that produce electric shocks? I sure hope so. Their electric organs are made up of disc-shaped nerve or muscle cells called electrocytes. These electrocytes are stacked, and when fired, the charge moves along them, creating a supercharge of up to 600 volts in some species. In order to protect themselves from electrocution, their body's connective and adipose tissue are insulated. But it's not 100% effective, and some have been seen twitching post-shock. The most dangerous electric species is the electric eel, which isn't even an eel.
Now, the eel part of his name may not be correct, but he sure came by the electric part honestly. Wasn't bad, was it?
These cuties can measure up to 2 meters long, and their bodies are lined with electrocytes, allowing them to wrap themselves around prey to zap them from all angles. These fish are the ones that can produce 600 volts of electricity, about the same as 400 AA batteries. When the eel discharges, it causes uncontrollable muscle spasms, paralyzing their prey. And sometimes, if the charge is strong enough, it can cause the prey to go into cardiac arrest. But even more badass than electric eels are the ones that jump. These eels leap out of the water to electrocute potential predators in an act of preemptive self-defense. They do this because the South American jungle ponds they live in dry up during the dry season, leaving them vulnerable to predators. Leaping out of the water is the best way to tell them to back off. Incidentally, it's also the most painful. By leaping and touching their potential predator outside of the water, they generate more power as the pulses don't get dissipated in the water. a leaping electric eel has enough power to kill a horse. Yikes.
There are stories of cattle, horses, even human beings being killed by the electric shock of eels. In fact, along the Amazon River, ranchers, they herd the eels into shallow water and then they kill them with their machetes.
Interestingly, the eels know when to use their shock. They use their electroreceptors to sense if an object is creating an electric field and thus alive. If they're not, they won't attack. These eels also use their electricity during courtship. In an attempt to woo the female, the male will serenade her with songs encoded in electrical charges.
The only way you can describe Joe's table manners is to say that they're downright shocking.
The second most dangerous electric species is the electric catfish. Like their cousins, the electric eels, electric catfish are river fish and can be found throughout tropical Africa along the Nile. These long fish deliver less of a punch and can only produce 350 volts.
Well, he's really soft.
Oh, yep.
It's not nearly as much as the electric eels, but it's still enough to stun an adult human or turn on a light bulb.
He should give us enough power to light the lights.
Electric rays, which are also known as torpedo fish, are a species of ray that can produce a shock of up to 220 volts. They're found throughout the world in warm, shallow waters, though some species live at depths of up to 1,000 meters. Their electric organs are bean-shaped and found on the dorsal side of their flat bodies on either side of their head. They use their electricity in self-defense, when hunting prey, and for navigation. Their shocks are quite painful and can knock out a human. Even cooler, electric rays were captured and their shocks were used in ancient Greece and Rome to treat gout and other ailments. And finally, we come to the ugliest electric species, the stargazer.
Wow! What is that?
You just threw it on the baby.
I didn't know the baby was there. What is that? What is it?
God.
That's like a stargazer. I think they're very poisonous.
I think I touched the spike at some point.
These beauties can only produce up to 50 volts, and we're not entirely sure what they use it for. Their electric organs are located behind their eyes, and when they discharge, the current flows throughout their bodies. The shock isn't terribly strong, and they don't seem to use it to stun prey. Instead, they have been observed discharging electricity in short bursts in order to attract mates.
The weaseliest and weirdest dog you've likely never seen. It might look like a bear/wiener dog mix, but it's really a ferocious Amazonian hunter that can take down prey as large as a tapir. This is the bush dog. Bush dogs are one of the weirdest and most elusive dogs in Latin America. It sees everything that other wild dogs do, and it does the opposite. But that converse approach to life is what allows it to thrive across much of the continent. Bush dogs live everywhere, from Costa Rica to the northern tip of Argentina. They seem to thrive in tropical rainforests, but have also been observed in grasslands, swamps, and pretty much anywhere that gives them enough cover and access to water. Okay, so a jungle dog that likes water. What's so strange about that? Well, the bush dog takes that wet dog smell to another level. They're amazing swimmers, in part because of their webbed toes, and their bodies with small legs make them efficient swimmers. They're kind of like the otters of dogs. Bush dogs can chase prey in water, and when hunting in packs, they can even set traps to force their prey to get into the water, where another bush dog is ready for them. This strategy is especially effective against rodents like pacas and capybaras, which often jump into the water to escape ocelot and jaguar attacks. Imagine evading a massive jaguar just to get eaten by a 5-kilo bush dog. But don't let looks fool you. These canids are smaller than beagles, but have been observed hunting tapirs. the largest wild animal in the Amazon. To hunt them, the pack chases the tapir and bites at their legs several times until the tapir is felled by ankle injuries and blood loss. It's death by 1,000 little annoying cuts. Pretty much no animal is safe from these dogs. They, like many other canids, are extremely adaptable and will go for the most abundant prey available. In the Pantanal region of Brazil, 9-banded armadillos make up over 90% of their diet. In the mountain forests of Paraguay, rodents are their favorite meal. And in the Atlantic forest of southern Brazil, where fruit is abundant, they have adapted to eating bananas and papayas almost as much as meat. Unfortunately, we don't know much about them. They prefer areas that are generally inaccessible to humans. They're very fearful of people, and they avoid roads and paths. They rarely ever appear in trap cam pictures. All we know about them is through a few observations, information gathered from native peoples of the region, and from their behavior in captivity. They were first discovered in the 1860s from fossils. At the time, they were believed to be extinct, and it wasn't until the 20th century that we started to learn a little bit more about them. We know that they live in groups with a dominant mating pair and a few subordinates. They mate year-round and maintain social cohesion through very dog-like behaviors, such as tail wagging, squeaks, and signs of submission. They mark their territories with urine and feces. The smells of these are so pungent that in large parts of their range, they're known as vinegar dogs. Pregnancies last 10 weeks, and babies are born looking oddly similar to the cutest babies in the world, Tasmanian devils. This social behavior helps them hunt in dense forests, where ambush tactics are more effective than straight-line speed. This is in stark contrast with their closest living relative, the maned wolf. Yep, these two handsome fellas are related, one of the largest canids and one of the shortest ones. The maned wolf is a solitary canid from the South American grasslands. They like to hunt alone, growl at others from a distance, and catch small prey that they can hunt with ease by themselves. But the more communally oriented bush dog, which is only about 1/3 of the size of the maned wolf, can catch the largest prey there is in their habitat. So the lone maned wolf got the looks and speed, but the bush dog got the gumption. They got that bush dog spirit in them. So how did these two cousins end up looking so different? Who was their common ancestor? That, we unfortunately just don't know. Animals don't fossilize well in tropical rainforests, and those who do are quickly covered by plant matter that makes it almost impossible to find them afterwards. But DNA analyses have shown that the bush dog is the more basal dog, meaning that their ancestor resembled them more. It was the maned wolf who had a glow-up once it came out of the jungle and into the pampas grassland. Unfortunately, deforestation and fragmentation of the rainforest are taking a toll on the bush dog. These little guys are semi-nomadic, which means they need large swaths of land to catch their prey. But as pockets of their habitat are getting smaller, they're less able to catch the food they need. Their populations have declined by 25% over the past 12 years. And with rainforest deforestation on the rise due to cattle ranching and mining projects, the bush dog is running out of places to hunt and live. Hopefully, as more areas get protected, they'll be able to establish stable populations. So please, support as many rainforest conservation initiatives as you can. It will help the bush dogs, as well as all of the other amazing Amazonian animals. A few weeks ago, when we were filming grizzlies out in the Rockies, we made what turned out to be quite a controversial statement about grizzly bears being the best bears. Well, we heard your comments, and so we thought we'd better check out that bear that many of you consider best. The black bear. heading out onto the water just outside Tofino, British Columbia, to try and see what a black bear has on the menu for breakfast. While there is a huge variety of black bear subspecies, from the champagne-colored spirit bears to the cinnamon bears to the ice blue glacier bears, we thought we would visit the coolest members of Clan Black Bear, the beach bears, or coastal black bears. We went out early in the morning, when the tide is low and coastal bears come down to the beach to look for breakfast. It didn't take long until we spotted something in the distance. Hopefully not another bear-looking rock. We got a little closer, and luckily, it wasn't a rock. It was one of the largest carnivores in North America. We just spotted a bear. He's just walking along the coast, right along the riverbank. Big. It's a big bear. Coastal bears are a subspecies of black bear. Their range is relatively small, occupying most of the north and west parts of the island. But in this small range, they've found paradise. The reason for their success here is they've become master fishermen. He found a big old rock, and he's flipping it over, looking for some breakfast. Like other bears, coastal bears take full advantage of the salmon run in the fall. But they have also learned to catch small fish and crustaceans caught in tide pools on the beach. Most of a black bear's diet is vegetation, like berries and roots and leaves, but 15% of their diet does need to be protein. And where they find that, for the most part, is down by the water here. So they're looking for invertebrates like barnacles and crustaceans. He's probably having some crab over there. I'm a little jealous. It's a good idea. They're a lot stronger than they look, and they use their bulk to roll over massive rocks looking for anything hiding underneath. You can find these bears on the hundreds of islands around Tofino, and they get around by swimming. These coastal bears have evolved extra webbing in their paws to make their commutes a little easier. Vancouver Island is home to the densest population of black bears in the world. It actually has about 20,000 individuals living on the island. It's the end of the fall, so coastal bears are rushing to pack on the pounds before their winter hibernation. They leave no stone unturned in their search for food, not even massive boulders. In parts of their range, black bears are entirely nocturnal. They're thought to do this to avoid confrontations with the larger and more aggressive brown bears. But here on the island, there are no brown bears, so black bears are free to look for food anytime they want. We just spotted another bear on the coastline. We're gonna try and get in close. We gotta be quiet. Despite being the third largest terrestrial carnivores in North America, they can be very skittish, and they know to fear humans. When we're around, even the sound of the waves is enough to send them running back to the safety of the tree line.
Oh wow. That's the wave. That's not us. That's a scary kind of wave.
After seeing them on the beach, we traveled inland to see them at their other favorite spot. And it was a boneyard. This riverbank is like a salmon graveyard, just strewn with bits and pieces and bones. Pure carnage. Its odor? Well, rank would be putting it lightly. This river here is just littered with fish that did not survive the spawning process. Oof, you can smell them. Yeah, I can smell that. Oh, you can smell that. Oh, can you smell that? That's fish. Fish that are rotting, but also fish that are reproducing. It makes for quite the pungent smell. I think I've stepped in so many rotting carcasses of fish that I'm probably gonna end up with maggots in my shoes. Yum. This is a good sign. Some of the fish were clean to the bone, and there was a good chance that bears were the culprit. Oh yeah, we're getting really close to a black bear. Look at this.
But here's some evidence that we're on the right trail. There are fish heads and tails, little bits and pieces. And these flies are cleaning up the job that's been left behind by a black bear. In the back of this area over here, you can see there's a pile of what looks like berries. And that's what's been undigested and left behind by a bear. Berry bear poop.
Every year, salmon come back from the ocean and swim up rivers to spawn and die.
This is the perfect spot to see them because the water slows down right along the bank here. That's where the salmon like to come and take a little rest before they carry on upstream. Oh, there he goes. There he goes. Did you see that? These salmon might smell, but they've actually achieved the ultimate goal for a salmon. The last step in a salmon's life is to pass on their genes. So they'll put everything they've got to swim upstream into these river deltas and estuaries, where they'll lay their eggs, fertilize them, and
die. Millions of salmon can swim up a single river, which gives predators a good chance to get some easy meals.
Walking along the river here feels pretty special because I'm seeing all kinds of organisms gathered here for the exact same reason. The gulls, the eagles, the anglers, and the black bears are all here to get their fill of salmon. We got a tip that there's a mother and her cub who are fishing around this area. We're really hoping that we might come across them.
And then we spotted something across the bank.
What is that? I think we found it. I think there's a black bear up ahead. Oh my God, there they are. There's a mother and her cub.
This cub is a yearling. She's about to go into her last winter with her mother. Her mom is teaching her everything she needs to know to survive on her own, including the best feeding spots.
Nobody goes to the buffet trying to slim down, let's be honest. And this right next to me is an all-you-can-eat salmon buffet.
Their strategy is quite simple. Wade out into the freezing cold water and wait for a salmon to jump out of the river and into their mouths.
She's right down the riverbanks. We're following along. We have to be quiet. There she is.
Though sometimes it's a bit easier to pick one up that's already died. It's just, less tasty.
Watching these bears just so deftly pick up these fish and carry them up the bank makes me think that they're kind of like giant raccoons on steroids. More like bearoids. Oh.
The yearling is waiting up in a tree, safe from harm's way, as she watches her mama fish down the river.
Can you see that? The black bear just caught a fish. She's tearing it apart. Right behind me. That's amazing.
And now it's the yearling's turn. She makes her way down the riverbank and tries her paw at fishing. She'll soon need to master this skill.
Do you see her? Oh, here she comes. She's coming down to the riverbank.
This yearling got lucky and made off with a salmon that's almost as long as she is.
Oh, she's got a massive salmon. And off she goes into the woods with her prized fish.
This area has milder winters than most of the rest of the black bear's range. That means that they can afford to gorge for longer and spend less time hibernating. And since they don't need to store as much fat reserves, they don't have to get as big as other black bears.
Though you wouldn't believe it if you saw one, black bears are the smallest among the bears in North America. But careful when you see one, they are gigantic. The average black bear reaches about 150 kilos, but the especially large males can reach all the way to 250 kilos. The one that we just spotted right over there on that other riverbank was probably closer to 250 kilograms.
The bears along this river are gorging themselves on as many salmon as they possibly can, trying to put on the pounds so that they'll have the energy to last through their long slumber through the winter. During this period, they don't eat at all and will lose up to 40% of their body weight. Going into hibernation without enough fat reserves can be lethal. It's especially crucial for the female black bears to put on a lot of weight in preparation for their long hibernation, because it's during hibernation that they'll give birth to their cub.
A black bear's metabolic rate needs to slow way down for it to get through its hibernation. Its heart rate, for example, goes from 50 beats per minute all the way down to 10.
The mom and her cub have had their fill, and just in time. Out of the bush, a massive male emerges. The riverbank is his.
There it is. Right there. There it is.
A big black bear. Oh yeah, take a look at that. He confidently struts down to the water and with almost no effort catches a massive salmon. He carries it up onto a log and devours it. Unfortunately, as untouched as this river looks, it's become fairly well known to tourists. Despite being king of the river, the presence of these tourists has the bears very stressed out, and even the largest males scare easily. Sadly, this means that for the bears, this bountiful river may not be one that they will return to in the future, making their lives that much harder. Fortunately, black bears are the most successful bears in North America. They thrive in all sorts of habitats and are a very versatile species. Just please leave them alone and keep your distance for your safety and theirs. Remember, a fed bear is a dead bear. Now that we've seen grizzly bears, coastal black bears, spirit bears, and polar bears, we can finally rule on which bear is best. Wait, what is that? I'd like to thank our friends at Terra Matter for making this episode possible. Terra Matter is a brilliant channel here on YouTube where you can discover the true beauty of our planet. With tons of original nature and environment content featuring gorgeous footage, you'll discover stories that have never been seen before. They put an emphasis on conservation and environmental topics so we can understand the challenges we face and how we might be able to overcome them. If you're interested in how we can make this world a better place, this is the best place to start. Check out their new Environment in the Arctic playlist. Just click on the link in the description or on the screen. Lots of love to our friends over at Terra Matter. So what should I talk about next? Please let me know in the comments and be sure to subscribe for new episodes of Animalogic every week. Thanks for watching and see ya!
It's like Garfield went through here.
What? I want to see a black bear painted like Garfield.
The crocodile is one of the deadliest predators in the world. Unfortunately, they find themselves prey to something far more dangerous.
Crocodiles are Archosaurian apex predators found in warm, tropical waters around the world. Because of this, they often clash with other apex predators like lions.
True crocodiles are a subfamily of crocodilians, and they separated from other crocodilians, like alligators and caiman, about 55 million years ago. They are more closely related to birds and dinosaurs than most other reptiles.
Which explains a lot. To tell a croc apart from an alligator, just take a look at their snouts.
Sharks have pointier V-shaped snouts, while gators have rounder U-shaped ones. Also, when alligators close their mouths, their lower jaw teeth get covered by their upper jaw. Crocodiles, on the other hand, have interlocking teeth,